Good afternoon. My name is Marcus Bailey Jr., a junior marketing student and also a COBE ambassador. Today, we have the honor of hearing from Dr. Chuck Wallington, Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing of Communications Officer at Cone Health. He serves on Cone Health's senior leadership team, shaping the business strategy for Greensboro-based healthcare systems, and leads an award-winning marketing and communications team. Dr. Wallington earned his PhD in leadership studies from the illustrious North Carolina A&T State University in 2021. His dissertation, Exploring the Leadership Journeys of African-American Male Executives, was published as a book, A Seat at the C Table, in 2024. He is also a 2024 Best C. Plank Award recipient for a lifetime commitment to mentoring and a winner of the 2023 D. Park Gibson Pioneer Award for the Public Relations Society of America. Dr. Wallington and his wife, Sandra, are residents in Greensboro and are active members of St. James Presbyterian Church. Deese College, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Chuck Wallington.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the final closing bell session of the fall semester. We are honored and glad to have each and every one of you all with us tonight. And we are especially honored to have with us Dr. Chuck Wallington from Cone Health, who is our closing bell speaker tonight. And we're going to have a fireside chat, if you will, where we just have a conversation, ask some questions, and then give you all the opportunity to ask some questions from the audience. Is that okay tonight? All right, so let's get started. Dr. Wallington, thank you for being with us tonight. We are honored to have you with us.
Thanks, sir.
Welcome back to Aggieland. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Glad to have you back on campus. You know, one of the first things, we didn't get to read all of your bio out loud, but the students have it in their program. You have a very interesting career. You have a wonderful path. You started as a newspaper reporter, then you went into communications and marketing, and now you're a senior executive. How did all of that come about? What was your impetus, and how are you where you're at now?
I appreciate the question, and good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see you all, and thank you for coming out on a Thursday evening. It's not lost on me. You could be doing anything else, like having dinner and chilling and doing something else, but you opted to come here, so thank you for doing that. Dr. Caldwell, I'm going to answer that question in two parts. The short answer is, at least for me, and I believe this for everybody, whatever your Creator has in store for you is for you. And your opportunity is to live into and ask for divine guidance from your Creator, and your Creator will show you what you're supposed to be. Yeah. So that's one answer in terms of how I got here. The other answer is, I was sharing with some of you students earlier, when I was a very, very young kid, all I knew is that I wanted to be a newspaper reporter. So I set my sights on being a newspaper reporter. I was the reporter for my class newspaper when I was in the 3rd grade. When I was in the 7th grade and went to what's now middle school, I worked on the school paper. When I went to high school, I became the high school editor of my newspaper. And so being a newspaper reporter is all that I wanted to do. And so that's what I set my sights on doing. And the good Lord allowed me to do that. So I did my undergraduate work at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and went there because there's an amazing school of journalism there. And so I went there, majored in journalism, and when I finished my senior year, I'd been offered 5 internships. I took the very first one that came along that took me to Detroit. And I was a newspaper reporter the summer after my senior year for the Detroit Free Press. Still an amazing, strong newspaper even today. I remember calling my parents and saying, I've been offered a job in Detroit. And I remember my mother in particular, my father just got silent on the other end of the phone. I remember my mother saying, why in the world would you leave North Carolina and go to Detroit? You don't know anybody there. And I said, you know what? I know one person there and I'm going. And I did, and literally the rest is history. So that's where my career took off. I had a great summer there in Detroit. I left there and went to Dallas, Texas, and became a newspaper reporter for the Dallas Times-Herald. And it was through that work and kind of following that direction that I was sitting in the newsroom one day and got a call from a recruiter who said, we're looking for an entry-level communications professional for a Fortune company in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Couple things. Remember now, I'm from North Carolina. I'm young, 20-something. I'm having my best life in Dallas, Texas, and I get a call to come back to North Carolina, Winston-Salem. And I was like, Lord, this is not what I want to do. And I gave myself that advice that I just said. If that's what the good Lord has in store, sometimes that's what we're supposed to do. So I did. I came back to North Carolina. My career really took off, and that's what allowed me to now do the things that I'm able to do. The doors just continued to open for me. It wasn't always easy. I took the tough assignments. I did the things that folks didn't want to do. I learned everything that I could. I asked a lot of the right questions, and the good Lord showed me favor and allowed me to progress through my career, and that's how I sit here now as an Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing and Communications Officer. There are lots of layers to that, but that's the short answer of a very long question. That's how I ended up here.
So let's talk about your role now, and what that all entails, because to your point, there are many layers to it. It seems like there's a very broad when you think about communications, when you think about marketing, particularly for a large healthcare system like Cone Health. Can you break that down for us? What exactly do you do?
What do I do when I get up every day? So I share with people, and I'll share with you all, I have two major roles at Cone Health. In my role as an Executive Vice President, I'm one of 8 senior leaders who reports to the Chief Executive Officer. And we're charged with setting the strategy for Cone Health. Our job is to make sure that we have a roadmap or a way forward. You all are business students, so you know what a strategy is, right? Businesses have to have a strategy or else you just kind of flounder around. I get to partner with the CEO and my other colleagues to create the strategy that's going to keep Cone Health successful and competitive in this marketplace for the next 70 plus years and beyond. So that's the first thing that I do. The other thing that I do is I'm the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer. So I get to lead the team of marketing and communications professionals. And our job is to create the marketing strategy and the business strategy that supports the overall company strategy. Again, you all are business students. You know that the business strategy comes first, right? I grew up in the Baptist church. There's something called call and response. So if I say something that you can relate to, it's okay to say, yep, that's right, right? So thank you, right? So the business strategy comes first. And when you have a solid business strategy, you can then create a marketing strategy and a communication strategy, a finance strategy, a human resources strategy to support that. So that's what I do, Dr. Caldwell. I get to sit into both those seats and be that senior executive helping to create the strategy and lead the organization. And I get to also lead the team that creates the marketing and communication strategy that supports the overall business strategy.
So when you talk about this strategy, one thing that I'm interested in hearing more about is, we think about it from a competitive field. You think about restaurants. There are multiple types of fast food restaurants, Burger King, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A. I suspect it's the same in healthcare. There are multiple types of healthcare companies, whether it's this hospital or a Novant or the others. So what are some of the challenges that Cone Health has in your role? How are you helping to handle those challenges?
When I came to Cone Health 14 years ago, the marketplace was just becoming competitive. Prior to that time, there were understood rules that Cone Health kind of dominated this marketplace. Wake Forest, now Atrium Health, dominated Winston-Salem with competition from Novant as well. Duke and UNC kind of stayed in their respective marketplaces. Over the last 14 years, though, that has changed. So if you look around just the Greensboro area, Wake Forest is represented here. Cone Health is represented here. Novant is here. Duke has a smaller presence, but they're here as well as UNC. So if you have insurance, you have options. You absolutely have options if you have insurance. And so that's what makes my job as the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer even more interesting. So as we think about this very competitive marketplace, our job at the end of the day is to ensure that if you need health care, we want you to come to Cone Health first. So that's part of what we do on the marketing side as well as on the communication side. The other thing we have to do is to make sure that we're looking at the business environment. So this is my EVP role, and we're aware of what our competitors are doing. And we have to make sure that we have a strategy that keeps us strong in this marketplace. Side note to you business students, one of the worst things you can do is to chase the strategy of your competitors. You have to be aware of what your competitors are doing, and you also have to create a strategy that works for you and for your business and the market that you want to be in. So that's what we get to do every day.
So I'm glad you talked about strategy. You know, our students here learn about that from the beginning in their business environment classes up to their more course intensive classes. But when we think about strategy, and I don't know what you can and cannot share in terms of what you all talk about, but I would be curious, like, what does a marketing meeting look like for your team? Like, what do you all do in those meetings? How do you all ideate? How do you all think about what visuals you're going to use on this ad, like what language you're going to put on this flyer or this commercial? What does that look like?
There's an art and a science to what we do, and I'm going to talk about the science. Numbers are your friends. Data is your friend, right? So one of the first things that we do is we look at what the data says. Here's an example. We have a very strong heart and vascular program here in North Carolina, fueled by Cone Health. Nationally recognized, some of the best cardiologists and cardiovascular surgeons you're going to find anywhere. And so what we do is we look at the data and what is the data saying about what the current trends are in the space of heart and vascular, right? Who are the people who are going to need cardiovascular care? And remember, while we're based out of Greensboro, there's a 5-county radius that we serve. So we have to look at folks in Rockingham County and Randolph County and Alamance County. Yes, Guilford County, and then the eastern part of Forsyth County. So we're looking at what the data says about consumers in the heart and vascular space as an example. And then our business partners who lead that heart and vascular service line are creating business strategies to keep that business strong. And we then create marketing and advertising strategies that do the same thing. Specifically, when we look at creating ad campaigns, for example, we have to determine within that broad market of people who may need services, who are they? What do they look like? Where do they live? We best communicate to them based on what the data says. What messages are going to resonate with them? What messages are not going to resonate them? We tend to test our ads in the marketplace as well. So when we have the time, we pull together focus groups of folks representing the cross-section of the marketplace and say, hey, here's an ad concept that we're considering. What do you think? What lands with you? What ticks you off? That's very important when we look at translating ad concepts from English into other languages, because as you know, what we say in English may not translate into Spanish, right? It's not always word for word. So we're that granular, and that's the science behind what we do. So data first and foremost to drive what the needs are, data that would suggest what the messaging could be. The creative piece then kicks in where we get to do creatives and we test them before they go into the marketplace.
So, if we could take that just another layer further, particularly for our students that are here, when we talk about strategic marketing and communications, how should our students take what you just said and translate that into how they're applying what they're learning in their classes and learning about strategic marketing and communication? So, how would you translate that over for our students right now?
So again, be clear about the science behind what we do. There are folks who believe that, oh, you're majoring in marketing or you work in marketing. How hard could that be, right? I can do your job. The same thing applies on the communication side of things. People think, gee, you're communicating. How hard can that be? And it is difficult if you do it right. It's challenging if you do it right. So pay attention to the data, don't run from the data, and allow the data to inform what it is that you're trying to do. And again, then test those ideas in the marketplace before you launch them, just to make sure that it's going to make sense.
Let's shift a little bit and talk about your transition into leadership. Again, we started at the newspaper, went to American Express. Now we're here at Cone Health, and all those different roles you've had to build and develop your leadership style. So what does leadership look like for you, and how has your leadership journey evolved?
There are a number of answers to that. So I'm going to start with this. Along the way, I've had some really incredible leaders, and I have learned from them. I've also had some horrible leaders, and I've learned from them. And I've probably learned more, Dr. Caldwell, from my bad leaders, because in watching them do what they did, I said to myself before I ever led people, I'm never going to do that. If I ever get a chance to lead one person, let alone a team of people, I will not do to him or her what was done to me or what I saw done to someone else. So a part of how I lead, frankly, was just formed by the good leaders that I've had and the not so good leaders. Another thing that formed the way that I lead is the experiences that I had as a child. Again, I told you I grew up in the church. How many of you have had experiences in, okay, great. So when I was coming along in the church, that was the first place that you learn how to lead, right? You led in your Sunday school classes. You led when there were, programs at church, right? Parents put you out there and said, you may not like this, but this is what you're getting ready to do, and you're going to act like you like it. And so we did, right? So leadership skills for me were really honed at a very, very early age when I was, in the church. So experiences at home, experiences at church, experiences with good leaders and bad leaders along the way, all those things have shaped how I choose to lead people. I am also very interested in and sensitive to the experience that people have when they're interacting with me. I never want to occur to people as the one who knows everything, because I don't know everything. Can't possibly know everything. So a part of what you'll get with the people who work with me is I listen to them. I intentionally surround myself with people who are way smarter than I am, because all I care about is I'm learning from them while they're learning from me, and we're getting some amazing work done. So that combination of experiences has kind of gotten me to where I am now.
It's evident that you have a wonderful career. You have done a lot, and your leadership has really been extremely impactful to the point where you decided to write a book about it based off of your dissertation, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
That's correct.
And so, you have this wonderful new book called A Seat at the C-Suite, Insights from the Leadership Journeys of African-American Executives. What was your thought process around taking your dissertation and turning it into a book?
Creating a book was nowhere on my radar at all. So as I was about to finish up here at North Carolina A&T, and you all probably know this, part of the dissertation process is you have to do your own original research. My PhD here is in leadership studies. And so I wanted to understand the leadership journeys of other African-American men who looked like me. What's your story been like? How'd you get to where you are? What have you learned along the way? What advice would you offer to other people? So I identified 30 Black men across the U.S. from various industries, and they agreed to talk to me, and their words became the data for the book. So I had a great experience doing that, and one of the members of my dissertation committee said to me just prior to the time that I was going to defend my dissertation, she says, Chuck, she says, you have a book in this research. I looked at her and I said, with all due respect, the last thing on my mind is writing a book. All I want to do is successfully defend and walk across that stage and graduate, right? That's all I wanted to do. And she says, okay, I respect that. So again, back to my point about it, at least in my life, when the good Lord has something for me to do, I'm going to have to do it. So while I didn't say yes right then and there was something in me that I couldn't shake that conversation. And so about 9 months after I graduated, Dr. Caldwell, I kept saying, okay, now I've got to publish this research somewhere. I can either do it in the scholarly space, or as my committee member was saying, if you write a book, more people will have exposure and access to the book. So I then reached out to this committee member and I said, okay, so what do I do? I've never written a book. What's that process? And she said, I'm glad you asked. So she connected me with an editor that she'd worked with, who connected me with a publisher. And then I spent the better part of a year in partnership with my editor converting that dissertation, which was very scholarly in its writing and all that kind of stuff, into a book that has more of an interest at the lay level. So that's how I ended up writing the book. And the book it's a tribute to the 30 men and the stories that they wrote, but it's also for folks who look like you, who are thinking, I'm at the Willie Deese College of Business and Economics at North Carolina A&T State University. I'm going to walk across that stage with an incredible degree that's going to open some doors for me. And I don't know what I don't know, and I'm scared out of my mind, but I believe I'm going to be okay. And what can I learn from folks who felt the same way that I felt? who've had the trepidation that I've had and have been successful. So the book is as much a tribute to these 30 men as it is to folks who look like you and others elsewhere whom I want to be successful based on what you read and hear and learn in that book.
Hopefully you all get to read it at some point. There's one thing in the book, and I can't remember which one of the executives were talking about it, where they were talking about the lack of mentors and things of that nature. Could you share some of your thoughts and findings on that? Particularly, as we think about, we talk to our students all the time about mentors and sponsors and things of that nature. What did your participants say? And then what have you yourself experienced climbing to the C-suite level that you're in right now?
For the 30 men that I interviewed, about half of them had had experiences with mentors along the way. The others had not. And yet they were still able to be successful. So one of the themes that came from the book is, if you're blessed to have a mentor at any time in your life on any level, take that blessing and use that blessing and don't take it for granted. Just to kind of level set, mentors are the folks who kind of say to you, I'm with you for the long haul. Right? A mentor doesn't have to be in your field, but it is someone who has had experiences similar to yours and can give you the guidance that you need as you're thinking about making decisions. A good mentor is not going to make the decision for you. A good mentor is going to ask you the questions that lead to you making the decision that you need to make. So that's a good mentor. So there was a lot of conversation about having a mentor and the benefit of a mentor and not having a mentor. There was also conversation about the differences between a mentor and a coach. A coach is oftentimes someone who's in your field who can say, hey, I watched you today make that presentation. Here's what you did really, really well. Here are a couple things you may want to think about doing differently the next time. Right? See the difference, right? The mentor's having, perhaps a more open conversation with you about any number of things. The coach can focus in on very specific things that you need. There's the ally. So allies are people who are lobbying for you when you don't even know they're lobbying for you. An ally can be a professor, or an ally can be a friend. When you get into the business world, it can be a colleague or a coworker, right? The sponsor is the one who's in the room when there is a live opportunity. And that sponsor says, this role was specifically designed for so-and-so, and let me tell you why. And I want us to put so-and-so in that role. So that's the difference. And again, there are conversations in the book about men who had access to mentors, but everybody had a sponsor or an ally. You're not going to be able to succeed in life, in the business world, if somebody's not your ally and your sponsor. It's just impossible unless you own the business. So that's what came out about that. And there are some, as I said, who didn't have access to mentors. My own personal story is, I had maybe 2 or 3 mentors along the way, but I'm kind of self-taught. I would love, even to this day, as I sit here and talk to you, I would love to have a mentor that I could go to and have an open, candid conversation about the things that I'm wrestling with. I don't have that person, right? But I do have sponsors and allies that I can go to. So I am one of those who hasn't had the benefit of a mentor, and I've been blessed to be successful in spite of not having a mentor. And that's why I am committed to being that person. I'm committed to being that person that I didn't really have. So there are folks that I officially mentor through a mentorship program that we have in Cone Health, and there are folks that I unofficially mentor whenever I can.
So it's obvious that you're a great writer. You love writing. Is there perhaps another book in the mix? What can you share with the wonderful students here in the Deese College?
I've learned to never say never. The first time I was asked if there was another book, I was like, no, I'm done. I don't know. There's part of me now that I've had a chance to think about it. I'd love to follow up with these 30 men to see where they are now, right? So might that be another book? Don't know. Might it be an article? Could be. So I'd love to follow up with them. there are other topics that have come along that I'm interested in and tossing them about. So my now answer is I don't know, but I'm open. So again, if that's what the good Lord wants me to do, then I'll figure out how to do it.
So before we transition to a more open Q&A with the audience, what's one piece of advice you would give yourself now if you could go back to your undergraduate days?
I shared this with some of the students who were with us earlier. One piece of advice that I would give myself is that you don't have to have all the answers. When I was walking around the campus of UNC and going into classrooms and one of a handful of students of color in there, I thought I had to have the answers and felt bad when I didn't. When I left UNC and got into the job market, I too thought I had to have all the answers. When I segued into corporate America, I thought I had to have all the answers. Let me tell you how relieved I was when it occurred to me one day that my job was to not have all the answers. My job was to have the right questions that lead to the right answers, right? My job was to be consistently inquisitive, to be curious, and to wonder how do things operate? How is this? So that's what I've learned over time. And if I had known that when I was y'all's age, I probably would still have hair. And and life would be a bit different. So that would be the one piece of advice I would give my younger self. Just don't sweat the answers. Really focus on the questions that lead you to the answers.
Hello, Dr. Wallington.
Hello.
I am Mahogany Cobb, a first-year marketing student from Clemson, South Carolina.
Hello, Mahogany.
Thank you for taking the time to come and speak with all of us today. Your achievements are extremely impressive.
Thank you.
My question to you is, with your leadership position, how do you still prioritize your personal growth and development throughout your leadership role?
Part of my personal growth and development was when I went back to school to get my master's degree. So I'm going to give you this timeline. So I had been out of UNC for a number of years working, and this, again, kind of like writing the book, I had always wanted to pursue a master's degree, had just never taken the time to do it. And my career was moving along, and I was about to not do it. And my wife challenged me one day and she says, either you're going to do it or stop talking about it. But either way, I support you. I love you and I support you. So I made the decision to return to school while working a full-time job and caring for, at the time, my mother was living with us and my wife's mother was living with us. So even with those dynamics, a full-time job, husband, I made the decision to go back to school. So that was a part of my growth and development. So I was very intentional about doing that. Halfway through my master's program, the good Lord revealed to me that there was a PhD in my future, and that's what brought me to North Carolina A&T. So again, same dynamics, moms are still living with us, job is really busy and all this kind of stuff, but the good Lord created a way for me to do that. So those are two examples of ways that I've stayed relevant by returning to school and continuing my education. Another thing that I've started to do in the last 10 years, and again, if I were to give advice to myself from younger, I have gotten more involved in some of my national professional organizations. So I now sit on the board, the National Board of the Public Relations Society of America. I am a trustee for the Institute for Public Relations. I'm a founding trustee for the Diversity Action Alliance, which is another professional organization in my field. So I wish I had done that earlier, but I'm doing it now and I love it, right? Again, I get to meet new people, I learn from them, and it makes me just a better person and a better professional. So those are a couple ways of how I do that.
My name is MJ, I'm a second year HANA student.
Nice to meet you, MJ.
My question for you is, what are some actions that your past bad leaders did? I remember that you spoke about you learned the most out of your bad leaders.
Wow. Any number of things. So I remember past bad leaders cutting people off in conversations and just making them feel bad in group settings. I've had past bad leaders who frankly were clueless about what they were doing and weren't savvy enough to admit that they were clueless, but they acted as though they did. I had one bad leader, may he now rest in peace, who didn't realize he had a problem with alcohol and alcoholism, and we would travel quite a bit. I ended up being the driver, after dinners and things like that, because I needed to get my behind back to the hotel safely. So So those are just 2 or 3 examples, from bad leaders, and maybe they're extreme examples, but you learn from things like that. I did anyway. I learned from that. I have had leaders who truly thought they knew everything. I just told y'all, no one knows everything. So I've tried to learn from that and say, gee, that's not going to be me. I'm going to be respectful for people. I'm going to give people a chance to talk. I'm never going to put people in danger if I can help it. And I surely don't know everything.
Good evening, Dr. Wallington.
Hello, sir.
My name is Dre Jackson from Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Very nice to meet you.
Junior accounting student. And my question is, how do you deal with the consumers that spill a bad brand or try to talk down on the brand of Cone Health? Like, I live like 5 minutes from my hospital in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and none of my family goes to that hospital.
I am familiar with your hospital.
Yeah. So how do you deal with the people that spill bad branding and covering up for your other teams that may possibly make a mistake that might mess up the brand? And may I have a book?
So sure to the last question. We'd love for you to have a book. So the worst thing that I could do is to cover up anything. So when mistakes happen, and they do, one of the first things that we do is to own the mistake. And then we understand, we do what's called a root cause analysis, all right? So if this mistake was this, what caused it? And how can we ensure that that mistake does not happen again? I will tell you that way of thinking permeates on the clinical side of things when it comes to patient care. It also transcends over to the business side of things, because sometimes we just make bad decisions and we own the bad decision and we move forward. So one of the worst things you could do as business students, one of the worst things my marketing colleagues could do is to try to cover it up. Own it. Own it immediately and talk about what you're going to do to rectify the current situation, and then begin to think about and talk about what you're going to do to make sure that it never happens again, or you mitigate the chances of it happening again. That's the way you keep your brand front and center.
Hello, Dr. Wallington.
Hello.
Thank you for your time. We
My
know it's very
pleasure.
valuable. I'm Lydia Morales, a second-year honors accounting student with a minor in business analytics. And my question to you, I just wanted to ask if you could go a little bit deeper into mentorship, sponsorship, having a coach. Specifically, how do you know when to go to each of them, like a mentor versus a sponsor, or a coach versus an ally?
So the short answer is it's situational. It depends upon what you're looking for. So for example, if you were wrestling with, I have a job offer and I'm not sure if I want to take it or not, a good mentor is a good place to go to have that conversation, where again, the mentor is going to ask you a lot of questions that get you to the answer about, yeah, this is something I can try, or no, you probably ought to steer clear, and that's why. And so a lot of it is situational, right? The coaching is something that I think we all need, because again, there's not a perfect person in here. So we could all benefit from someone who can help us think about doing things better, think about doing things differently. My wife is someone who steps into that role for me. She's quick to say, no. Next time you're talking to a group, don't say this, say that instead. Or she'll say, oh, I suggest that you think about this versus that, right? So that's the coach piece of it. More specifically, once you're in the business world and in the companies that you're going to be working for, that ally and that sponsor are probably going to naturally morph, right? So there's somebody who's going to see the potential in you, and they're going to gravitate to you, and they're going to talk to you. They're going to affirm what you're doing. They may even do a little coaching and say, hey, the next time you make this presentation, think about doing that, but I see potential in you, right? That's that ally. And then again, the sponsor is the one who, when there really is a live opportunity, can say, I have watched this young lady, she's doing great. If I had a role in my organization, I would hire her there. I don't, but colleague, you have a position, she can do well.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I am well.
My name is Mackenzie Morris. I'm a first-year business management student coming from North Carolina. And I was gonna go off of you talking about your risk, basically. When it comes to you taking that next step and deciding to go ahead and make that book, or you deciding to go back to school even though you had a lot going on, how do you figure out the factors in your life and then go on about that?
I ask for divine guidance. Because left to my own devices, I'll go off and do something. It may be on track and it may just be as off in left field as it needs to be. So I am very quick to say, okay, Lord, this seems interesting. Am I supposed to do this or not? I'll give you an example. I was at a professional conference about 3 weeks ago, and one of my colleagues said, hey, Chuck, we really think that you'd be great at leading this organization. I want you to think about it. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. My wife was with me. I went back to the hotel room at dinner that night. We were talking about it. I said, so here's what was suggested to me. And so my wife said, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know, because I got to discern whether that's the good Lord speaking through this colleague, or is that just somebody else who thinks I'd be good at this. I say yes, and it turns out to be the last thing I'm supposed to do, right? So I don't know. I don't know yet. So that's an example of how I kind of first ask for divine guidance, and then when I get the guidance that says yes, sometimes the yes means yes and learn more, right? Sometimes the answer is not completely clear. Sometimes the answer is yes and learn more. Sometimes the answer is sit right here. So maybe I'm supposed to lead this organization, but not next year. Maybe I'm supposed to lead it in 2 or 3 or 4 years. So does that help? The first place for me is asking for that divine guidance. And the second thing would be to bounce it off of someone whom I trust, right? In this case, my wife.
Hi everyone, my name is Zuri Yearwood and I'm a senior business management student from Chicago. I also serve as a Deese ambassador for this current academic year. And I want to go back to the mentorship piece. I know a lot of us in the room are maybe in search of a mentor but don't know how to take that first step. What advice would you give us for initiating that relationship?
I'm going to tell you what I've observed our colleagues who don't look like us do. When they're in settings and they meet someone, they typically say, can I follow up with you? And they do. When I guest lecture at other colleges and universities, one of the first things folks ask me is, are you on LinkedIn? My answer is yes. And they will hit me up on LinkedIn and they will ask for a time on my calendar. And if I can accommodate them, I will. And if I can't, I'll say, I can't right now, but let's figure out how to do it. So short answer is be aggressive in searching out for someone to be your mentor. And you got to be strategic about it as well, right? So when you reach out to someone, why'd you reach out to him or her? What is it about their background that you believe is going to help you? What specifically do you want out of a mentorship? Because lots of folks reach out and they're like, oh, will you mentor me? What does that mean to you? What are you looking for? And not every mentorship can be for the indefinite long haul, right? So be thoughtful about it. Don't just reach out to any and everybody, but again, ask for guidance for the 1 or 2 people that you're supposed to reach out to, and be really clear on what it is that you want them to do. At Cone Health, we have a program where I am an executive coach. And the coaching interaction has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And there's a contract that we sign, and the coachee says on the front end, here are the 3 things that I want us to work towards solving. So my job then as the coach is to help my coachee work through those 3 things. And so it's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. That does a couple things. One, we're not married, right? Right? There's a reason we're getting together. We get together, we accomplish those things, and then we move on. That allows the coachee, or in your case, the mentee, to kind of move on and kind of learn and grow from that. It opens up space for me to then bring in somebody else. So look for be strategic about who you're going to reach out to, be really clear on what you want them to do, and realize that you drive it. You can't just call and say, hey, I want a mentor, and expect the mentor to say, oh, this is great. I got a 3-step program for you. How does this work?
My name is Kelly. I'm a first-year finance major.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. My question is, why did you take your first internship offer? Dr. Moore and Mr. Khan, they always teach us not to take the first offer and always combat it. So why did you take that first offer?
Because I was a poor black boy who had just earned a degree, was about to earn a degree from Chapel Hill. The first job offer was with a major daily newspaper in Detroit, Michigan, that folks were dying to go to work. And so that's why this poor black guy took that job offer. I didn't have anything to lose as far as I was concerned. So in my infinite wisdom as a 22-year-old, I packed my worldly goods in my little unair-conditioned car. One of my fraternity brothers drove with me to Detroit, and that's where I started my professional career, and I have never regretted it. So I am not discounting what your professor said. I'm just telling you what I did as a poor black boy who had a degree and had been offered a job. There was no way I was going to turn down that offer and risk having to come back here, because Greensboro's home, having to come back here and work for the News and Record or something like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I had already done that during the summers and during the school year. I wanted something different, and that something different was presented to me, and I took it, and I've never regretted it.
Hello, Dr. Wallington.
How are
I'm
you?
Charlie Zalin. I'm good. I'm a sophomore finance major. My one question was, what are your tips on transferring through different fields and keeping your profession, and how do you keep your momentum while building and still reaching up to the top?
Learning as much as you can for the field or the industry that you're in, and then taking that information that transfers with you into the next industry or the next field, right? So I took what I learned as a reporter, that transferred into my first corporate job, that transferred, which ended up being consumer packaged goods, Nabisco brands. Then when I went to American Express, that was financial services, brand new industry, but those skills transferred over. And then now into healthcare. So I kept building my skill set, my portfolio, and then figuring out how to adapt that skill set in the new industries that I went into.
Thank you so much for that.
Sure.
And then my second part of the question was also, how do you keep your momentum while, I know you said that you went through different careers, different career fields. And I know they can be very cutthroat, so how do you still keep your momentum while learning new things and being the underdog in the situation? Right.
Again, relying on my higher power first and foremost. And secondly, by this time I'm married, I've got obligations, I had bills to pay, right? So I didn't have the luxury of saying, I am not feeling this job today, so I'm not gonna go to work, or I'm just gonna quit my job and figure out something else. That was never an option for me. So I was motivated to keep things moving because I had obligations that I had to meet, and I had goals. If nothing else, I learned along the way that nothing lasts forever. The bad bosses, at some point, they move on, or you get to move on, right? Or that assignment that you take that you don't like, but you're gonna learn from, at some point, there's an end to that as well. So that's how I maintain my own momentum. And once I realized that was kind of the way that the job market is, and that's the way that corporate America is, I was okay with it, right? None of us are gonna leave here, none of you are gonna leave here and automatically become CEO. None of you are going to leave here and automatically become a chief marketing and communications officer. It just doesn't happen that way unless you've found your company. But you got to be able to, take the good experiences with the not so good experiences and realize they're not going to last forever, but there is something for you to learn from every one of those experiences.
Thank you so much for coming to speak with us today. Everybody give it up for him again.
Thank you.
On behalf of the Willie A. Deese College of Business and Economics, we would love to give you this gift and our token of appreciation for you coming out tonight.
Thank you so very much, and thanks to each and every one of you. I appreciate it.
I think that 3 things that really resonated with me were, 1, the importance of having a mentor and how to initiate a mentor relationship. 2, the importance of knowing your numbers and knowing your data, especially in the healthcare field. And then 3rd, just when you understand what your assignment is and what your purpose is, to really go after it and follow your dreams, no matter the hurdles that you're gonna face, just kind of knowing that you're in alignment with who you're really meant to be.
My biggest takeaway from Dr. Wallington was to make sure that you have a different type of coach, a mentor, an ally, along with a sponsor. and they all have different roles, but they all can make sure that they help you in different ways. I also learned from Dr. Wallington that you have to make sure that you take different steps and that you take all the different skills that you learn from each step along with you, as he went from newspaper editor to now chief marketing executive. And as you have to be able to make sure that you learn from your bad bosses, your good bosses, and that you have to make sure that you're always improving and keeping the Lord first. Oh yeah, the book. I had to make sure I asked for one of these books before I left. It has a lot of valuable information, especially from the 30 different executives that he's interviewed, 15 having mentors, 15 not having mentors. And I had to make sure that I could take the advice that's in the book.
So this is actually our final Closing Bell speaker series of the semester. We will be right back next semester in January. So follow at NCAT Deese College for any updates on the page, and see you next semester.